Patricia, once a name lost in the cacophony of a bustling office. She was a woman of routine, her days blending into a blur of spreadsheets, deadlines, and endless emails. Surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. Each day she plastered on a smile, hiding the growing emptiness gnawing at her soul. No one noticed the tremor in her hands or the dark circles under her eyes. Patricia was a ghost haunting her own life, a specter drifting unseen. Her apartment, a small sterile box, offered little solace. The light within her, once bright and vibrant, flickered precariously. The city outside her window throbbed with life, a stark contrast to Patricia's desolate heart. Her work, once a source of pride, became her tormentor. Deadlines loomed like vultures, circling closer with each passing hour. Panic attacks became a regular occurrence, a terrifying reminder of her mind's fragility. Desperate for relief, Patricia sought solace in painkillers. The pills promised escape, a brief respite from her relentless torment. But the relief was fleeting, and the darkness always returned, stronger each time. She was caught in a vicious cycle, the very thing that promised relief only tightening the chains of her addiction. The line between day and night blurred. Patricia existed in a perpetual twilight, her life a monotonous cycle of work, pills, and fleeting moments of oblivion. Sleep, when it came, was filled with nightmares. She craved human connection, but fear kept her chained in place. She withdrew further into herself, a prisoner in her own mind. Her phone lay abandoned, its silence a testament to her growing isolation. Each unanswered ring was a nail in the coffin of her social life. Her life, once filled with promise, had become a bleak and desolate landscape. At work, the cracks in Patricia's facade began to show. Her once impeccable work ethic slipped. Deadlines were missed. Her colleagues noticed the change, but remained at a distance. The office felt oppressive, the air thick with unspoken judgment. Patricia could feel their stares, whispering about her behind cupped hands. Panic attacks struck at the most inopportune moments. The pills, once a temporary escape, became a crutch. The line between reality and the haze of medication blurred, and the darkness within her grew stronger. The demands of her job intensified. A new project pushed Patricia to the brink. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford. Meals were reduced to hurried bites at her desk. The pills were no longer enough to keep the darkness at bay. Her thoughts raced, a jumbled torrent of fear and self-loathing. One night, the weight of it all became too much, a wave of terror so overwhelming that it felt like her soul was being ripped apart. The pain intensified, a searing white-hot agony. Patricia clutched at her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The world around her dissolved into a swirling vortex. She felt a sharp, sickening crack, the sound of her sanity shattering. The darkness surged forward, a suffocating wave of oblivion. Blood seeped from her eyes, ears, and nose. Her heart, pushed beyond its limits, tore itself apart. The light within her sputtered and died. But Patricia wasn't gone. Her physical form lay still, but something lingered. A spark of consciousness fueled by her violent demise. Anger, pure and potent, refused to be extinguished. This residual essence found itself drawn to her laptop. It seeped into the machine, corrupting its code. The laptop hummed, displaying distorted images of Patricia's final moments. Patricia's spirit, now free to roam the digital ether, awaited her command. The first whispers began as glitches, subtle disruptions in the digital realm, emails sent at odd hours, laced with a chilling undercurrent of malice. Deadlines inexplicably shifted, demands escalating. Colleagues who had dismissed her struggles now found themselves plagued by their own anxieties. The whispers grew louder, evolving into targeted attacks. Her boss received the brunt of her digital fury. His computer became a conduit for her rage. His world, once predictable and secure, became a minefield of uncertainty and fear. The whispers of Patricia's vengeance echoed through the sterile hallways of the office, a creeping dread that infected everyone she had known. Her anger seeped into the very fabric of the building, a palpable presence that sent chills down the spines of those who crossed her path.
The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken fear, the once familiar surroundings now imbued with an eerie sense of foreboding.
The office, once a hive of activity, became eerily quiet. Conversations ceased abruptly whenever Patricia's name was mentioned. Her former colleagues exchanged uneasy glances, their faces etched with guilt and apprehension. The weight of their complicity pressed down on them, a heavy burden they couldn't escape.
Strange occurrences plagued the office. Lights flickered erratically, computers malfunctioned without explanation, their screens displaying cryptic messages.
Phones rang with no one on the other end. The fear spread like a virus, infecting everyone who had ever dismissed Patricia's pain. They became prisoners in their own right, trapped in a nightmare of their own making, haunted by the specter of the woman they had failed to see. Patricia's wrath, amplified by the digital world she now inhabited, became a force of nature, a digital tsunami that crashed upon the shores of their carefully constructed lives. Those who had worked closely with her, who had shared her burdens, who had witnessed her decline firsthand, were the first to succumb to her wrath. They possessed the most intimate knowledge of her suffering, and it was this knowledge that sealed their fate.
Their nightmares began subtly, whispers of my voice invading their dreams, their faces contorted in a grotesque mockery of their waking personas. Then the dreams turned darker, more vivid, filled with images of my final moments, my pain, my terror, my rage, all replayed in their minds with agonizing clarity.
They woke up in cold sweats, their hearts pounding, the echoes of her torment clinging to them like a shroud. Sleep, once a refuge from the day's anxieties, became a torment, a nightly rendezvous with their own guilt and complicity in Patricia's demise. They tried to distract themselves, to outrun the memories that haunted them, but Patricia's presence was inescapable. It lurked in the shadows of their minds, a constant reminder of the darkness they had unleashed.
Their bodies, weakened by lack of sleep and consumed by fear, began to betray them. Their hearts, once symbols of life and vitality, now stuttered under the weight of their guilt, their rhythms erratic and unpredictable.
They felt a constant pressure in their chests, a tightness that made it difficult to breathe, as if an invisible hand were slowly squeezing the life out of them. Panic set in, spreading through Patricia's former colleagues like wildfire. They knew they were marked for death, the whispers, the nightmares, harbingers of a darkness they could not outrun. They sought solace, but nothing could quell the terror, Patricia's presence was a suffocating weight, reminding them their time was running out. They were living on borrowed time. Some tried to escape, to outrun the darkness. They quit their jobs, abandoned their homes. They became ghosts themselves, haunted by Patricia's vengeance. There was no escape. The first to go was Mark, a junior analyst who had often borne the brunt of Patricia's workload. He had been the one to complain the loudest about her slipping performance, the one who had benefited most from her late nights and tireless efforts. Now, he felt the full weight of her wrath.
It started subtly, a persistent headache that refused to abate, a growing sense of unease that clung to him like a second skin. Then came the nightmares. Vivid, horrifying visions of Patricia, her face contorted in a mask of rage, her eyes burning with an unholy fire.
He would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding, the echo of her fury ringing in his ears. His work suffered. Deadlines were missed, errors crept into his reports, and the once praised efficiency that had been his hallmark became a distant memory. His colleagues, initially sympathetic, grew impatient, their concern replaced by a chilling indifference that mirrored the apathy they had shown Patricia in her final days.
One evening, as Mark sat hunched over his computer, desperately trying to meet an impossible deadline, he felt a sharp, searing pain explode in his head. The room spun, the lines of code on his screen blurring into a dizzying kaleidoscope of colors and shapes. He clutched at his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps, a cold dread creeping into his heart as he realized, with chilling certainty, that this was no ordinary headache.
News of Mark's sudden and unexplained demise spread through the office like wildfire, fanning the flames of fear that had been smoldering since Patricia's death. What had once been whispered in hushed tones was now spoken openly. The veil of denial lifted, revealing the horrifying truth that lay beneath.
One by one, the dominoes began to fall. Sarah, the project manager who had relentlessly pushed Patricia to meet impossible deadlines, suffered a massive heart attack during a late-night meeting. Her colleagues, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and morbid fascination, watched in horror as she collapsed onto the conference table, her lifeless hand still clutching a printout of the project plan that had driven Patricia to her grave.
Then there was David, the IT specialist who had ignored Patricia's pleas for help with her malfunctioning computer, dismissing her concerns as user error. He was found slumped over his keyboard, his face illuminated by the eerie glow of his monitor, a single drop of blood trickling from his ear, his eyes frozen in a mask of sheer terror.
The office, once a place of ambition and striving, transformed into a battleground, a hunting ground where the living walked on eggshells, their every thought and action scrutinized by an unseen force that seemed to delight in their growing terror. The air crackled with a palpable sense of dread, a suffocating weight that pressed down on them, reminding them that they were not just employees, but prey.
With each victim, Patricia's power grew, her rage fueled by the fear and despair that now permeated every corner of the company. The digital world, once a tool of her torment, became her weapon, a conduit for her wrath that allowed her to strike at will, her reach extending far beyond the confines of the physical realm.
The company, desperate to contain the growing panic, brought in grief counselors and workplace safety experts, but their efforts were futile. How do you fight against a ghost in the machine, a vengeful spirit whose power was amplified by the very technology that defined their existence? The answer, they soon discovered, was that you couldn't.
One by one, those who had played a part in Patricia's downfall succumbed to her wrath, their deaths mirroring the agony and despair that had consumed her in her final moments. Their hearts, weakened by guilt and fear, gave out, their minds, tormented by nightmares and visions of her vengeance, shattered under the strain.
Their deaths were not swift, nor were they painless. Patricia, her spirit warped and twisted by the digital purgatory she now inhabited, savored their suffering, drawing out their agony, making them pay for their indifference, their cruelty, their complicity in her demise.
The office stands empty now, a silent monument to Patricia's rage. The desks are deserted, the phones disconnected, the once bustling workspace now a desolate wasteland. The silence is deafening, broken only by the hum of the ventilation system.
The company, its reputation in ruins, ceased to exist. The building now stands abandoned, a grim reminder of the darkness in ambition. Some say Patricia's spirit still lingers, her rage echoing through the empty server rooms.
They say her screams can still be heard in the dead of night, a chilling reminder of unchecked greed.